All right, so next up we have another example. We want to find the inverse function of this. Does this have an inverse? Well, it's hard to tell from the equation, and I definitely don't want to try to do this algebraically. So we're going to leave that one there, and put this, so we're going to graph it. 5x minus 3 over 2x plus 1. And we can kind of zoom out on this, and you can see, looks like it might have a horizontal asymptote at about 2.5, maybe, yeah. But other than that, it passes it. Well, not other than that, horizontal asymptote doesn't actually go horizontal, so it will still pass the horizontal line test. So this one has an inverse. Okay, so now that we know that, let's go back and find it. So, but before we do that, let's look at what is our domain. Remember, we need to throw out anything that causes us to divide by 0. So we do not want the denominator to equal 0. So that would be 2x equals -1, x equals -1/2. So we cannot have -1/2. Now the range, I think it's 2.5, but it might be something else. So we're going to hold off on that just for a minute. Okay, we're going to find this formula for the inverse. Okay, so we're going to say, okay, great, we got y equals, we got 5x minus 3 over 2x plus 1. And of course, we are going to swap the x's and the y's. You definitely want to practice this one because it has a tendency to show up on tests, okay? So, and it's not that it's hard, but it's just like if you don't remember how to do it, it can be a little tricky. So we're going to cross multiply on this one. We're going to multiply both sides by 2y plus 1. 2y plus 1 and 5y minus 3. And then we're going to distribute. So we've got 2xy plus x, 5y minus 3. And remember, we need to solve for y. So we want to get all the y's on one side, all the x's on the other. So we're going to leave the 2xy. We're going to move the 5y to the left side. So we're going to subtract 5y. We're also going to subtract x to move it to the right side. And we're going to end up with this. Okay. Now, on the left side, you might notice that, hey, both those terms have a y. I can factor out the y. And if you want to factor out the -1 on the right-hand side, go ahead, but I never do. Okay, so we've got y equals -x minus 3. We're going to divide both sides by 2x minus 5. And there we go. We have our inverse function. Now, what's the domain for this inverse function? We do not want 2x minus 5 to equal 0. So x is 5/2. That's the number we have to exclude from the domain, which is 2.5. Now, let's look at this graph of our function here. So we have our inverse function was -x minus 3 over 2x minus 5, right? Yep, there we go. And if we go ahead and we'll turn back on that 45 degree. This one's harder to see, but I think you can still see that it is a reflection about the 45-degree line. If we want to look at, we can see that we have that vertical asymptote at 2.5. We can see that we have a horizontal asymptote maybe at about 1/2. And that is actually where it is at. So y can't be -1/2. And up here, remember how we looked at the original function and said, oh, it looks like we have that horizontal asymptote at 2.5? That's exactly where it is. So 5/2. So we've done the domain and the range for each, and we've added it to the graph. And we've got one more, but it's almost 5 minutes, so we'll break for the next video.